What is going on, guys? Welcome back to another video. So we are now almost 3 weeks into the NHL season, which is absolutely crazy to think. I feel like it started yesterday, and although it is still very early into the season, most teams have played like 7 to 10 games at this point. That's around 10% of the season. It's not massive overreactions to a couple games at this point, like when I did hot takes last time. So I decided to yet again ask you guys for hot takes. We're going to go through them right now. Of course, you submit this on my Instagram. Feel free to go follow me on my Instagram, on hockey. We're going to go through it, and I'm going to let you know whether or not I think some of these takes are absolutely ludicrous or if they could potentially happen. So let's not waste any time. Let's get into it. Up first from Aiden Cash. He says Ducks are growing impatient with Zegras, and a mid-season trade is very likely. And yeah, Zegras to start the season, 1 goal, 1 assist, 2 points in 8 games. Last year, obviously had that contract dispute, then got hurt, was around half a point per game player. And then the prior 2 seasons was a 60-point guy. It is not the trajectory that you like to see from a 23-year-old at this point. This offseason, I didn't really believe the hype about trading him, considering the fact his value was by far at the lowest of his entire NHL career since the night that he got drafted. So I still don't love the idea of trading him right now, but I do agree if he continues to not produce at a high level, if he's below half a point per game, it might be best to move on for him. He still has a year after this at $5.75 million. If you don't think that he's going to be a long-term, if you still really think Bennett Seneca is going to pan out, if you plan on taking a forward in this year's draft, which has a shit ton of very high forwards, and the Ducks will probably be picking within the top 8, I don't hate the idea of moving off him for like a second-round pick. I think that's probably what they would get right now, considering the fact he is making a hefty $5.75 million. So I could see this happening. Clearly, Carlson is the center of the future. McTavish probably has more potential than Zegras at this point. You move him to the wing, but even then, I think he might be capping out as a second-line player at this point, considering the Ducks do have a bunch of studs. I wouldn't hate the idea of some kind of change of scenery, some kind of trade for Trevor Zegras. Next up from Teggy92, he says, Hagens falls to 3rd or 4th in the draft. The New York hockey players start off Zegras, and now Hagens are getting killed in this. I still think Hagens, rightfully so, is the number 1 player in this draft as of right now, but his stock is definitely neutral, while guys like Porter Martone, who's scoring above 1 goal and an assist per game right now in the OHL, Michael Misa has like 17 goals in 13 OHL games. It is definitely more likely that Hagens might not be the first guy off the board. I think right now, in terms of him being a top 2 pick, I'd put that at like 90-95% at this point, but it's definitely possible if the San Jose Sharks get that first overall pick, they don't want another kind of smaller center. They go with the Porter Martone, Matthew Schaefer, or some other teams. I still think Hagens will be a top 2 pick for sure. 2nd overall pick, will he go 1st overall pick? That's probably more so like 65-35 right now. Him falling to 3rd and 4th, those guys, Martone and Misa, would have to keep on producing nearly at the rate that they're going at right now. Obviously, Misa's not going to score 85 goals in the OHL this season, but Hagens would have to be pretty sporting. Hagens still playing good at Boston College right now. He has 5 points in 4 games. It's not like he's completely shitting the bed. I still think Hagens most likely will go 1st overall. Next up from Corey, Annunen ends the season top 10 in Vezina votes. And yes, with Georgiev massively struggling, Justus Annunen has really came in and kind of seized that job for Colorado. I remember when they were starting off, people were like, they should trade for John Gibson. I'm like, what are you talking about? No, don't massively overreact to this, considering the fact that a guy like Annunen had like a 925 last year. Granted, he was only in like 13, 14 games, but was widely regarded as like a top 10 goalie prospect in the NHL. You did not need to massively overreact because this guy might eventually turn into a damn good starter, and it appears like they've lost faith in Georgiev. So I could definitely see Annunen finish top 10 if he starts 45 to 50 games, and this Colorado team is rightfully so a playoff team. I think I would bet that if that was available. The problem is, you only vote 1st through 3rd for the Vezina, so he might just not get any 3rd or 2nd place. But if it was 1 through 5 like the other awards, I would definitely say he has a real chance of picking up some 4th and 5th place Vezina votes this year. We got one about Cole Caufield from Alex. It says Cole Caufield 50-goal season, and yes, he is killing it right now. I think I said 40 goals before the season. I would yet again hammer that. 50 is just that next tier when looking at it on a most likely bottom 10 team, maybe even bottom 5 in the entire NHL. I can't quite go to 50, but it is clear that top line, whether Slafkovsky's up there, whether Kirby Doc's up there, it is damn good with Suzuki and Caufield. I would set his line at like 41.5 right now for Cole Caufield, which would be a fantastic season. Again, he has never hit 30 goals in a season thus far. I can't quite go to 50, but he is having a monster season, and I'm very excited to see it. We got this from Aaron, and I had to include this one. Taylor Hall is the most forgettable first overall pick and MVP of all time. I completely disagree with this, man. First overall pick, you gotta realize there are some irrelevant first overall picks in NHL history that just did not work out. Not Nail Yakupov level busts, but there's guys that just had like perfectly mad careers. Eric Johnson, one obviously that really comes to mind. In terms of the MVP, I understand it's not McDavid having 153 points. It's not Matthews having 60 goals, Carey Price having a 935 in like 65 games. But I still think it's a pretty memorable MVP because it was such a carry. In the last 15 years, I think Corey Perry's MVP heart-winning season, as well as Sedin's heart-winning season, will definitely be forgot about more in 25, 30 years. Maybe it's because I live in New Jersey. I do like the Devils, so it's more fresh in my mind, and I was tracking it very intensely. But I think that was definitely an iconic heart-winning season, considering the fact that Devils team fucking sucked. Like, just straight up, bar none. That team was not good. Nico Hischier was like their second best player. An 18-year-old Nico Hischier was second on the team in points with like 50 points. Taylor Hall led the team in points by like 44 points and carried them. There was iconic moments throughout the season of him winning, scoring game-winning goals and stuff like that. I think that is a very iconic heart win of the 21st century. I'm not gonna lie. It's not the best, but it's definitely not forgettable. I think that's crazy. We got this from Paul. Detroit will continue to squeeze out wins and will make the playoffs. I'm going to talk about more of this in depth on my podcast that's coming out tomorrow, filming it tonight probably. But yeah, Detroit, that is crazy. The week that they just had, New York Islanders got outshot 31-10. Alex Lyons stood on his head and they win 1-0. The Devils, they got doubled up. It was 40-20. They won that 5-3. I think Detroit's definitely going to be a half-decent team. I'm not sure how sustainable this is, getting caved in and then their goalie standing on their head, but we'll talk about that more in depth. I still think that they missed the playoffs. Maybe they won't be as bad as I thought, which was like 81 points, I think. They might be better than that, but I still would go no playoffs. We got this from C. Millsy, 87. He says, McDavid doesn't finish top 10 in the Hart this year. We're going to change this to top 5 because I think top 10, that would be a massive shock. Edmonton would have to miss the playoffs probably for that to happen, and he would have to be below 100 points this season. So I think top 10 is definitely going to happen. Could top 5 potentially not happen? I still don't think it's that likely. When looking at it, yes, he's having a slow start, but by his standards, I think he's about point per game right now. And even last season, the team was far worse to start the season. They were 2-9-1, I believe, and he only had like 12 points in his first 13 games, still finished with 132. I have him in fantasy, so maybe I'm just talking myself into it that he's going to completely turn it around and finish top 5. But with Connor McDavid, I'd still set his points over under at 115, considering the fact that he's still point per game right now. He's going to start really popping off. This Edmonton team is back on track and yet again around 500 after a pretty brutal start. He's going to be fine. Top, maybe not a finalist. I could see that considering Kaprizov, Kucherov, McKinnon all balling out right now. I could definitely see that be the top 3. But also a guy like Austin Matthews struggling out the gate. I think McDavid is definitely going to finish top 5 in Hart voting. Got this from Tom. Elias Pettersson doesn't bounce back. And it depends what you mean by bounce back here. Do you mean the player that he was in 2023 when he had 102 points at the start of last season, the first half when he was yet again on pace for 100 points? If you mean that, I think there's a possibility that he's never a 100-point, two-way, Selke-level guy. That peak 2023 Pettersson, maybe he'll never be that. If you just mean back on track to what he was before that, point per game, very good defensively, I think he's going to find his game to that degree. I think it is maybe more so mental than physical. I don't think at 25, 26 years old, this guy massively fell off, or he's lazy, he got the bag, and he just doesn't give a shit anymore. So I agree, maybe he's never going to be a top 15 player in the entire NHL, but he's far too talented to just be in this mental rut that he's been in for the last 40 games. He's definitely going to get back on track to a degree. We got this from Donovan MJ3. Tampa is a top 2 team in the Atlantic. Just need Vasilevsky to get back to form. And I agree, if Vasilevsky gets back to 2018 to 2022 form, this would be probably the second best team in the Atlantic Division, arguably the best. There's just massive concerns about Vasilevsky. We're acting like he didn't have massive back surgery, lumbar disc surgery, and just hasn't been the same goalie since. It is not like he just had this light sprained ankle that he missed 6 weeks. He had some massive surgery for a position where you need your goddamn back. So I agree. This Tampa team is still very good. I probably would pick them to make the playoffs right now over my New York Islanders. But to act like it's been 18 months since we saw 2023 regular season Vasilevsky. Then he got shelved in the playoffs. We have not seen that Vasilevsky in over a year and a half at this point. Not saying he'll never be a good goalie again, but that elite top two, arguably best goalie in the entire NHL, Vasilevsky, might just be gone. Maybe I'll eat my words. He started out pretty decent this season, but he has not looked the same. He's looking like himself last year. And it's, again, we have that point of injury that was such a massive injury. It is possible that Vasilevsky, as top three goalie, is gone. Next up, we got this from LeBlanc James. He's ready to fire Travis Green. Travis Green fired by January. They'd have to be really bad. They'd have to be cooking at like a 35 to 40% points percentage in January for that to happen. I think that considering he's a new coach, I don't think Travis Green's getting fired this season unless they're below 80 points or something like that. It would definitely be unfortunate. That people have their complaints with Travis Green. It hasn't been perfect to start this season, but firing a coach 4 months into his tenure would be pretty nuts. We got something about the Devils from Steven Bird, 62. He says, Devils miss the playoffs. And similarly to the Ottawa Senators, has it been perfect for the Devils to start this season? No, but there's 6-4-2. That's what, like a 59% points percentage that would be good enough to make the playoffs. And when looking at it, they just got Brett Pesce and Luke Hughes back. They were dealing with some defensive core injuries. I think Jack Hughes, that we're actually going to talk about soon, is going to start to really hit his groove. On top of the goaltending, although I was not as high on their goalie tandem as other people heading into the season, I thought it was like an average to above average group, considering the fact that Markstrom is so wildly inconsistent. They're getting 889 goaltending right now. That is going to improve. How much will it improve? I think you can agree it'll be at least like 897 for the most part. So they've had an okay start. It has not been perfect by any means. And when looking at it, they're getting two top four defensemen back in the lineup this week. So when looking at it, I'm not too worried about the Devils massively. Are they a lock to make the playoffs? No, but I would peg them anywhere from like 70 to 75% right now. Other teams in that wild card race, when looking at an Ottawa Senators that I thought maybe would take a big jump, my New York Islanders, or even like a Tampa Bay Lightning, they haven't had some insane start to the season where the Devils are in this big hole. So even the Boston Bruins are also struggling a decent amount. So I wouldn't worry too much about the New Jersey Devils right now and be at the conclusion that they're going to miss the playoffs. We got one for a New York Ranger, Lafrenière, 90-point season from Jay Pelliccio. That's an Italian name, goddamn. If this would happen, not saying it's a 0% chance, but if this would happen, there's a 0% chance if Trocheck, Zibanejad, Panarin, and Kreider all stay healthy throughout the entire season. In order for this to happen, which you don't root for, either there'd have to be a power play change or one of those guys would have to get hurt. In order to score 90 points in the NHL, you got to be on a top power play. You can't play 1 minute, 15 seconds a night on the second power play. That's not going to get you to 90 points in the NHL unless you're playing exclusively with like Connor McDavid at even strength and you're playing 22 minutes a night. He would have to somehow get bumped to that top power play. Could he get 70 points this year, just mainly even strength? Possible, but again, to get to 90 points just through even strength for the most part would be insanity from Alexis Lafrenière. His deal would be one of the best in the entire NHL starting next year if that were to happen. Looking at a different player that's having a little bit of a slower start in the New York metro area, Hubert J says Jack Hughes under 90 points. And yeah, Jack Hughes is not playing up to snuff. Nico Hischier has really had to carry the load a decent amount for the New Jersey Devils right now. I still think he's going to go north of 90. I initially had him at, I think, like 107, maybe even 109 heading into the season. I think it's going to be lower at this point. When looking at it, he definitely needs to step up, but you still watch this guy with the puck on his stick in transition. He is clearly a special talent. He's going to most likely go for north of 90 points. It's not a good start, but he is still a damn good player. In the last two seasons, he's been well above 90-point pace, similarly to a Pettersson. I don't think he just fell off out of nowhere at 23 years old. I'd still absolutely hammer over 90 points. Barring injuries, again, you could be right because he could, like he has done in prior seasons, miss 15 to 20 games. Like, obviously he's not hitting it there, but if he's fully healthy, I'd still bet on Jack Hughes to go over 90 points. We got this from Aaron. Barkov retires as Finland's GOAT. When looking at who the GOAT is right now, I think it's pretty easily Teemu Selanne. That would be very hard for him to top. For me personally, Selanne is a top 30 player in NHL history. If Barkov, I think his best case to retire is like a Bergeron type who's top 50 for me. But Teemu Selanne's offensive ceiling was just so disgusting. Obviously, it was probably his first season. He scored 76 goals. But even at like 38 years old, I think he had like 48 and 48. I don't think he's going to be that big of have that great of a career. I think he could potentially retire as number 2. He's probably on track to retire as number 2, but Selanne really was next level. Barkov's going to have to win 4 to 5 Selkies, finish north of 1,400 points, win maybe another Stanley Cup on top of that. To pass a guy like Teemu Selanne, not impossible, not likely. I'd put it at like 15% to happen as of right now. And then lastly, we got this from Connor McBikey. John Carlson finishes top 5 in Norris voting. I like this hot take a decent amount. John Carlson had one bad down year offensively last year on a Capitals team that kind of stunk. This season, he has Jacob Chychrun. They are absolutely clicking as a pair. Last time when I looked it up, what was it, Friday? They've outscored opponents 8-1 at even strength. The power play hopefully can start to cook. I could see him go for 65-ish points, 70-ish points. So as long as his defensive numbers are good, which they have been thus far, you could definitely see if the Washington Capitals are safely a playoff team, you could see John Carlson really have a big season and end up in Norris talks. He's definitely probably be in that second tier behind Cale Makar, Quinn Hughes, and Adam Fox, who are having very good starts. But in terms of that 4th or 5th place spot, I could see it for John Carlson. But yeah, let me know in the comments, what do you think about these hot takes? Which ones do you agree with? Which ones do you think are absolutely ludicrous? Thank you guys always for submitting them. Instagram and Beyond Hockey. I'll be seeing you in the next one. Podcast tomorrow too.